Hey, you guys, let's talk about math. I think it was my last monthly homeschool update video where I explained that Morgan had completed at least 16 chapters of Math UC in a month, and usually it's a chapter-ish per week. Well, that's kind of a lot. We were moving really quickly. Now we've hit a glitch. I want to talk about that glitch because it's kind of important. So while I did 16 weeks with Morgan that first month, or the last month, we essentially stayed on one chapter this entire month. A bit of a difference, right? But so the very beginning of Delta was easy for Morgan because she had her math facts already from multiplication. So she had her times tables down cold, 1 through 12. And if you have that, then it really makes division pretty easy. When we got to the mechanics of the long division, a lot of big numbers, it became tricky because of the mechanics of the math. That was really hard for Morgan to understand why. So I want to talk a little bit about the process and why it's so important for Morgan to stay in a mastery program because of that. So we had, if you know me, you know that we have done loads of math, and we started homeschooling last year, and Morgan did Saxon 3. We started doing math the summer she got out of the 3rd grade, and her teachers were awesome. So this is no knock on public school at all. Morgan has difficulty remembering certain things, and unless we do a mastery program, which I found out last year, she won't have the ability to stay on a topic long enough for it to go into her mid and long-term memory. So we really liked Saxon. We did Saxon 3, and that was great, but it changes greatly between 3 and 5-4. And we got 20 chapters into 5-4, and I just realized it's so difficult with a spiral program when you need a mastery program. So I go into depth about that with a couple of my videos. I won't belabor that now, but what is interesting is we've hit a couple of glitches in the past where we stayed on a subject, and if you, for Math UC, there's 8 pages per chapter. And so you don't have to, you can stay on, is it 8 pages? 7 or 8 pages. So you can take longer than a week to do each chapter, or you can skip some. It doesn't matter. The point is, when your kid says, I get it, can we move on? You don't stay on that chapter. You move on to the next one, you move on to the next one. So I'll show you what I mean literally. So Morgan she did the first 16 chapters. Let me see if I can get that. Okay, there. So you can see that we have done every single chapter, but there's pages in here that we just didn't need to do. Now here is where we've done every single page of every single chapter. And then we hit a glitch. So I knew that we needed to do every page, and then we had to stay on one chapter the entire month. So while we did 16 chapters the last month, we have done one chapter in the month of October. Now you would think that that's going to make us slow or make us or set us behind. In fact, it's my short experience that the exact opposite is true. That once Morgan hovers over a subject until she gets it, no matter how long it takes her to get it, she then is able to just leapfrog and go until there's another mini glitch or a big glitch. But this big glitch, that was hard on Morgan. I wanted to remind Morgan, because we hit a couple of them last year, but not one that took this long. But I reminded her of what it felt like when she got something after a really long time. She invested all of her grit and pushed on and got it. What did it feel like? She said it felt amazing. I felt so smart. I felt like I was really getting it. And so every time she gets this way, every time we hit this glitch in a subject, I remind her that this too shall pass. We will get better, we will get it, and we will move on. And there's always going to be a glitch because there's always going to be new math. And I don't care how long it takes to get something. I just don't want to move until we really get it. And you need to stay in place until they get it, especially with mastery. And it'll only make them faster and stronger. But there were other things that we could do in the meantime, and that is another type of mastery program. I didn't realize this was going to come in so handy, but it did. And so since we switched to live education, Waldorf style of learning, because we're really interested in doing that with learning with art attached to it. The suggested math that they have for live education is the Key To series. And so I had already purchased the Key to Fractions and we'd started it. Well, this is mastery. Essentially, it's all about fractions, little by little, and you don't move until you get it. So while we were struggling with Delta, with long division, Morgan wasn't struggling with fractions. So it was really kind of a nice distraction or a nice reminder that just because it's difficult in one location doesn't mean it's going to be impossible or difficult in another. So this was really helpful. So I will walk you through all of the math that we do in a day, as well as how we solved our glitch, how we moved away finally after 4 weeks from one chapter. The first thing to remember is when you're doing Delta, or Math UC rather, there are only 8 pages before you get to the next chapter. But remember, when you buy the program, you also have the digital package. And so the digital toolbox has as many, you just go into whatever chapter we were having trouble with. Let's just say it was 18. You go into chapter 18 in the digital toolbox, and you can, if you use up all 8 pages and you still don't get it, you still don't move on, you go to the digital toolbox and you start generating new problems for the kid, and so they can continue to practice. That is exactly what we did. But something that I did that was really different was that I got my little book, because we have a little junk book, and I work out problems with her on mine, or she has hers. But what I did was, while she had the printout, I wrote down what the questions were. And while she looked at her problem, I was working out the same problem, but she wasn't watching me do it and watching my hand solve the problem. She was listening to my voice and doing it along with me at the same time. And we did that every single problem for weeks. And she'd get it, and then I think we were going to move on, and then she'd forget the concept. And it is complicated. Long division is a pain. I remember it being a pain in the 80s. It doesn't get any better. It's still just as much of a pain. But the difference is I can pay attention to what her problem is, and hers is order of operation and the mechanics of the long division. So we brought out the big guns. We brought out the Math UC manipulatives. I visualized with her all of the things that were happening. And it's not just about division. This is for anything that you might have a glitch with too. I looked up every single YouTube video on long division. I screened it in advance so it wasn't annoying or frustrating or wasn't going to cause more problems with Morgan. And then I would show her, and we would we'd watch the video together, and then we'd go back to the table and we'd work out another few problems. And I really think that it's important for the kid to do it themselves. And so even though, for instance, if you have a whiteboard and you're walking them through a question, they really do need to have that question on their page, and they really do need to have, Morgan does at least, she needs the pencil in her hand, she needs her eyes to be where her hand and her paper are, and to work it out. And she's getting really good about saying, oh wait, I don't know, what did you just do, or how did you do that, or why? And we'll just stop and pause, and I will walk her through that. So with the manipulatives, with YouTube videos, with the, and there's a video along with every chapter, but if a kid doesn't get it, it won't help just rewatching the same video over and over and over again. There needs to be more. And so there's no knock on this program at all. It just is what it is. If you have a kid who needs to hold on a subject long enough, chances are it's reasonable to assume that you need more than just what that program can give you. And that's what YouTube is for. That's what online is for. The Khan Academy, or any kind of individual guy or gal who's done a fantastic thing of making a video to teach a kid how to do a particular subject, that's out there, and it's a resource for me, and it definitely was really helpful for Morgan. And that's what we did. We stayed on it. But we didn't only do those pages, because in this house, I mean, I think in every house, math is a core. But for us, when I say math is a core, I mean that we do a lot of math. Not doing a lot of math is not an option. We're going to do a lot of math. So we not only did a whole bunch of division and practice, but this can be really demoralizing for a kid if they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and still not getting it, which is where other things come in handy. So when we were in a glitch, we would do one full page of the division problems that Morgan was having trouble with. And then we did a front and back page of the key to metric measurement, because by then we had finished fractions. So she could have done that, but we had already finished the fractions. And instead of going on to fractions, I wanted her to start doing measurement. And she had asked for this too, so that she could stay up to date and current with her multiplication problems or facts. So Morgan is doing a front and back page, essentially this whole thing every morning. So she started with this. We do some of the frustrating long division, and we took out the manipulatives and watched videos and practiced our math here. And then we did a front and back page, essentially this whole thing, a front and back page of metric measurement. And something I added because I thought it would be fun, and I don't talk about it a lot, and I know it's important, is mental math. So I had avoided purposely mental math because one hurdle in math like this is enough, and trying to get our footing in math last year was enough without the mental math of it. But I've added mental math in. And you know who's really good at that? Pepper&Pine. So if some of you watch her video, she's got a YouTube channel, but she also she sells some curriculum. And we will be buying her geometry curriculum for next year, because next year, while Morgan does delta, or she's doing delta, epsilon, zeta, and then pre-algebra is next year, Waldorf Live Education does geometry. So we'll do geometry as unit studies and then use Pepper&Pine's geometry and her videos. We'll purchase her curriculum next year. But what I did was I purchased her mental math, and I got grades 1 through 3. So this is kind of easy, folks, especially for a 5th grader. This was meant to start her off with mental math because I know it's difficult for both her and I. And we're doing it together. Because I think if you like this sort of thing, it's worth you purchasing it yourself. So it's dated, and then you do one, it's very simple. You do 5 of these a day. So the first one would be 2 plus 8, 13 plus 7, 7 plus 2, 6 minus 5 plus 1. Pretty basic, right, for a 5th grader. But what we don't want to have is 2 epic fails in one go. So if we're having trouble with mental math and also having trouble with a mastery concept, that's a fail situation you don't want to put your kid in, and I don't want to put Morgan in that. So I gave her some pretty simple mental math to start. But to be clear, Pepper&Pine doesn't do a lot of simple math for very long. So if you look at her 4th to 8th grade mental math, it can get tricky, and it's hard for me as well. So I thought we would start really easy. So we do mental math every morning. We do a front and back page of metric. She does her front and back page of timed, and then her delta. And then one day, when I was doing math with her, so I was doing my equation over here and she was doing hers over here, I realized, I looked over, and instead of her waiting for me to walk her through it and then her following me with her own hands and her own eyes on her own paper, she finished solving the equation. She was waiting for me, and she was just beaming. She said, I've got it. I really got it. I'd like to try to do the rest by myself, please. And she hits a couple of glitches now and then, but for the most part, it's done. We honed in, or we focused on what we needed to, and we didn't let go. And now she's just taken off and moving on. So you would think that would have put us a month behind. I had planned to finish Delta before Christmas. You'd think that holding in one chapter would keep us, or have us really behind in our math. She's moving really fast again. So off we go. I'm going to say, I'm going to put a plug in for testing also. I think I'd like to do a video specifically on testing. But one thing that I like to do is Morgan testing holds my feet to the fire. So she takes a test just to take the test. I just want her to take tests and learn how to take tests and not be stressed about tests. I don't care how she does in them. I mean, I do, but you know what I mean. The test is actually for me. It's to see if I have taught Morgan in such a way that allows her to remember that information and to build on it. And those standardized tests are really helpful for me to do that. So the plan is every year to test Morgan. And I have my last homeschool video of the 4th grade, my homeschool wrap up, talks about why that was so important for me to do testing, both in spelling, vocabulary, and math were kind of 3 big deals for me last year. What I'm doing with Morgan needs to pay off for her. And I need to make sure that it does. And one really great way of doing that is by having her take the Stanford 10 and the Adam K-12 exams, or the final test at the end of the year. And so that's our plan. Because if there are any gaps, guess what we're going to do? We're going to work on them. I think I'm really adamant about this because what I hear sometimes from people is, well, my kid isn't really good at math, or she struggles in math. And so they take a bit of an easier path with math. And I would, barring any learning difficulties, because that should be the caveat all of the time, that there's always exceptions to the rule, and our children are our children and they must work at their own pace. But barring any of those difficulties, just because a kid struggles with something doesn't mean that we need to go easy on it. In fact, in this house, we're doing a lot of what Morgan struggles with if it's an important subject. And for us, reading, French, and math are the three most important subjects here. And we won't move. And in fact, everything else can take a hike. If we have trouble in any one of those, then the rest of our day is filled up following up on those difficulties, because a foreign language is intensely important for us here. Learning reading, real deep reading, learning to read fast, learning comprehension while reading, doing the narration of it, reading a lot, understanding it all is huge for later on. And so in that regard, I don't really care about science most of the time. Why? Because at this age, science is nothing but English anyway. They're concepts. It's the same. You can actually do a whole literature or reading program just covering topics in science, because you don't have the math to do the real science yet. You need calculus and beyond to do that, or at least harder algebra. So everything else can take a back seat, but I need to prove that it's working. And I am seeing it. I am seeing that holding fast and staying true to those three core subjects is paying off for Morgan. And it's all about my kid. It's all about it paying off for her. If I let her get too far behind in math now and just assume that she won't want to go into a career that involves math, I could really be stymieing her future, because kids change. What they like now may not be, in very short order after adolescence, may not be of interest to them at all. And so my job as a mom who has a child who struggles in a subject that is intensely important, my job is to keep that gap as narrow as absolutely possible without burning out my kid. Some days that's a fine line to ride, but it's my line to ride. It's my problem. It's not Morgan's problem. She has challenges in math, but it's my problem to figure out how to get her through those, and how to teach her how she can get through those, and also keep the important subjects really on the table. So that's the deal with that. And in fact, I was looking through my Saxon, the old Saxon 5.4. I was curious of, well, where are we now? How would we stand? Because Morgan's in the 5th grade. Where would we stand if we did 5.4, which is essentially for 5th grade? And it's interesting. There's some like way back here in the very back pages that she could easily just tear through super fast. But then we haven't had, let's see, I think in chapter 20 or the third investigation 3, and like the first third of the book, they talk about square roots, and we just haven't talked about square roots yet. So it's really, mastery and spiral it's hard to compare, but I feel, looking through all of these pages, while we don't have some things at all, we haven't been introduced to some things at all, we are where we need to be, essentially, by the time we get to pre-algebra, when all of this kind of marries up together, because Math UC is pieced apart in different types of subjects within math. Once we get to pre-algebra in both Math UC and Saxon, we're comparable. We have at least experienced every single thing that in mastery that you would in Saxon. However, I would say that looking through this, Saxon is more rigorous, for more than just because it's the number of pages or the number of problems you do per page, which we meet that in rigor with the amount of math that we do here. But I think the complexity of some of the topics that they go a little bit deeper into, and they spend more time concerning themselves with the names of things and the terminology, then I do see Saxon as more rigorous. However, if this mastery or this spiral program doesn't work for Morgan, it doesn't matter how good it is. It just won't work for her. So it's all well and good having a great program, but if a great program doesn't work for your kid, it's not a program at all, is it? And finally, I had purchased this book based off of, I'm not sure if any of you have watched the YouTube channel Melanated and Well-Educated. She was offline for about 2 years, and her reason for being offline is really worth watching, actually. She was showing math, and I really appreciate her because she spends a lot of time on all subjects. She's very clear that she is very rigorous in a lot. Her kids spend a lot of time in school with her, but she has this spirit and this effervescence about her that if I was her kid, I want to do nothing but school all day too. So I was curious to see what she was doing for math with her youngest. And she is, I think her youngest might be in 8th grade now, but this is the core skills math review for grades 6 through 8. And when I saw this, I thought I was really interested. I kind of want to see, well, this would be neat if I had a topic. Oh, I think we spilled in the kitchen. Okay, my flour jar no longer has a top, so that broke and exploded down the hallway, but we're all okay. So, Melanated and Well-Educated, she had purchased this book for her son to do a grade 6 through 8 review of all core math skills. And I thought, well, that's a really cool idea. I hadn't really seen anything that covered essentially middle grade. And we don't need this now, but while I was thinking about it, and it was only, I think, $13 or $14, I wanted to get it and review it and then keep it on hold for something that we want to use when Morgan hits the 8th grade. She can run through each one, do a couple of pages a day, and kind of do a quick overall review before we move into high school. So this is something, an example of something that I might have on hand and keep on hold of things that I want to think about using, but I don't need yet. All right, that's it. That's what happened with math this month. I'll see you guys later.